Trying to look where the camera is. Okay. Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is January 15th of 2021. I switched cameras. I was using the Logitech Brio because it was expensive and because it's supposed to be 4K and all that kind of stuff. And for some reason, I don't know when it started, but I haven't liked the video, or I haven't liked the image. So I disconnected it and I've hooked in, and this is the Logitech, I think it's a C920, which is less expensive. However, all these Logitech cameras, since the virus situation popped up and everybody's working at home, prices just, everybody raised the prices up. But actually, I've ended up, I reviewed in the past when I hit about 1,000 reviews on Amazon till they took them all off. They didn't give me any notice or anything. They just took them off. I know why they did it, but they didn't tell me. I just, Anyway, so I'm using the old camera. I've rearranged things a little bit, of course. And I like it better that, in a way, that the camera, the camera is on top of the monitor, and I think that's a little bit better. The other one I had on top of the tripod. I still want to buy it's about $200. I still want to buy the card so that I can plug this camera into that and feed it into the computer through that device, and then you will be seeing me through this camera. And since all these cell phones have pretty much fantastic cameras in them, and you can slip them in your pocket and have them with you all the time. And I've got 3 cameras. This is the best. I got 3 Panasonics. This is the best. And well, I'm not sure really it is the best. I mean, it's the best, but with the lens that I have on it, it's the best for if I want to do this. That would be a great lens on it. Otherwise, I should have a different lens. So, I think I just choked on my own spit. I found this. Excuse me. There's Coke in here, of course. It does not sap your vital fluids the way water does. I'm going to show you all this video. Don't worry. It's only 1 minute and 14 seconds. Just happened to run across it. Well, I'm subscribed to. By the way, please subscribe to my channel. I only need 4 more subscribers, and then I have 3,000 subscribers. And it only took me, I think, since 2005. What is that, 15 years, 16 years or something? It's just taken me that long to get 3,000 subscribers. Oh my God. Anyway, I found this video here. It's from KMBC Channel 9 in Kansas City, Missouri, back in the, oh my God, back in the 60s, I think the 60s. I went there for every Sunday, I think it was, I believe, for to that's where the radio and television studios were, and there was I went there and did a weekly radio program for 30 minutes because they were part of which forget what group. I think it was the Mormons had a network, I believe, and they bought whatever network, and they owned they bought WRUL Radio, New York Worldwide, that broadcast on shortwave radio around the world, and I did a radio program for them. And since KMBC was whatever, I went down there for free and recorded it once a week. Then eventually I just started recording it at home on my Wollensack 8-track tape recorder. And why did not somebody tell me that broadcast people use the full tape? Somebody should have told me that, because I took one of the tapes that KMBC gave me and I ran it through to make sure. I ran it through my tape recorder and erased all 8 tracks. But there was recordings, I did not know that, in between. So then I mailed it off to WRUL, Radio New York Worldwide. And then I tuned in to WRUL, one of their frequencies. They use, like, it depended on the time of the year because of the ionospheric conditions. They would change. They'd keep some of the channels, I mean, some of the frequencies, then some would change because of conditions. And I was 3 days a week. I was broadcast 3 days a week. And I tuned in to one of the frequencies. I don't remember which one. And my show started, and you could hear me talking, but in between you could hear the previous show, or I was also maybe backwards. Maybe it was going backwards to the one track that was not erased, or I don't know. Anyway, that was not good. But that's my experience with KMBC. I just happened to be, one time when I went in to I followed a guy who was a minister, by the way. And he recorded his show before mine. I had a stopwatch, and I knew that, when it came to the end of my 30 minutes, or was getting close, then I threw in some little short items, because that way I filled it up, and then I, whatever. But this guy, this minister, God bless him, he would run over a minute or something, and then he would start. Then they would say, I'm sure he was paying. Well, probably, yeah, he was probably paying. Anyway, so they'd start over, and I'd have to wait. But anyway, I went in there one time, and they said, Jim, we're now broadcasting on our FM stereo. There was another, I think it was KCMO, I can't remember. There was another one that was doing stereo FM radio. And they said, and so they said, now listen to this. I didn't tell them. In fact, I didn't really realize it myself or think about it. My hearing, especially for something like music, wasn't very good. And they said, we're doing both, I forget what it was, both channels, or this or that or whatever. And I said, oh, I don't know, And they said, listen to it. I said, oh, it's wonderful. And they said, yeah. they were going to like start the next day or whatever. That would be, they were doing FM, but it was next day was going to be stereo, and they were so happy. And so anyway, that's my experience with now KCMO News in Kansas City, Missouri. That was I worked there security as a second job, contract security there. I worked hospital security, but then I worked it for a while at KCMO News. So, yes, I've had a lot of jobs. Anyway, I found this. It says some Kansas City hospital workers want to see a $15 minimum wage. And the hospital is Research Medical Center, you're going to see. And they mentioned Truman Medical Center. Truman Medical Center used to be General Hospital. I spent time at General Hospital when my grandmother, I'd been back when I was in first or second grade. She would have a heart attack occasionally. And in third grade, I think she passed away. But so I spent time at General Hospital, which became Truman Medical Center. So that's like, if you're in a major city or whatever, that's like a county. That's where everybody, that's where the poor people go. And that's where, if you're like a police officer that gets, or if you have something, like, that's funny. It's like, oh my God, the poor people go there, and regular people like, I don't want to go, if you can go someplace else, I don't want to go there. But they're the trauma center. They're the place that has whatever type of surgery, whatever type of surgeon and staff, they're there when you arrive. Where if you go to a lot of other hospitals, they're not trauma centers, and you're going to have to, they're going to have to put you on ice or something and wait until they can get maybe, a surgeon and people to come in. But I spent some time so they mentioned Truman's Hospital too. I never worked at Truman Hospital. So anyway, the thing here is some Kansas City hospital workers want to see $15 minimum wage. My God. Let me add too that one of the hospitals that I worked at, I was on a committee, and there was other groups. I think there was like 3 or 4 of us, and we went over the paperwork that we were given to rate. They weren't going to, we didn't write down a wage to give these people. What we did was like, I forget, what kind of conditions do these people work in? Okay, if you worked in the laundry or the kitchen or whatever, so they were each different job, If you worked in the laundry or the kitchen or whatever, they would be hot, and, maybe slippery and dangerous if, you don't. And remember, for the biomed people, we rated them. And of course, for more than one, I'm just giving you a little short, biomed people, if they make a mistake with the equipment that they work with, could that be expensive? I'm sure, I forget how they put it, because it was a company that came, the Human Resources Department or Personnel Department, they didn't grow up. This was a company that they paid money to come and go to their hospital and then work up these things and then give back the, subtract the data and who knows what and give it back. But so like biomed, wow, if they mess up this monitor, or if they mess up this, machine that's, now some of those machines, they would have somebody, we had people, not we, there were people who flew in, like for a CAT scan or whatever. They would have somebody fly in, and they would hospital would have to pay for hotel room, a rental car, and all this type of stuff to come in to do something. But eventually, well, all the hospitals got their own biomed department, but still occasionally somebody would have to. So we rated all these things, and then they looked at all the things, and I'm not sure if they made any, except I know the biomed department got good ratings because it was like when I thought I should be in the biomed department. I wish I had a electronic technician's degree. And then it turned out that eventually I've talked about this. I was so upset with being in the security department and with the director of security. I kind of liked him, but he was something else. And I just told him, I can't take you much longer. And then he said, well, what would you do, And I said, I don't know. He said, well, what if you could do anything? And I said, well, electronics, I'm into computers. That was when very few people were into computers. And I have to have a computer or more than one computer and everything. And they sent me over to interview with the guy that was in charge of the biomed department. And he said, Jim, we need, I said, I don't have it. All the people he had working for him had, electronic technicians degrees and stuff. And I said, I would love to work for you and work in the biomed department, but I don't. He said, no, computer. He says, we need your computer expertise. He says, we need all this. And then he told me what they needed, they had to check beds, they had to check wall plugs. It all had to be done on, a certain period of time, and it was machineries and all this they had to know all this kind of stuff. And he says, that would be what we'd have you doing, And so he set it up that I was to be hired in as soon as there was an opening. And I couldn't, there were 2 or 3 of his guys were looking for better jobs. And he was coming in, and I was telling him, is there an opening yet? And he says, Jim, hang on. I said, I can't hang on, and I couldn't hang on any longer. So, anyway, let's just go ahead and, this is 1 minute and 14 seconds, and I'm going to maximize it during this time. And so here we go.
Outside Research Medical Center, hours apart. They want $15 minimum wage.
It's just come to work, do what you're supposed to do, and we'll give you a few pennies to do it, which is not right.
Ernest Banks says he's worked at Research for 20 years cleaning floors. He makes $13 an hour.
There's people up there working now and they can't even afford to go to the doctor.
Last month, Truman Medical Centers announced increasing its minimum wage to $15. HCA Midwest Health says in February it will do the same, but not for union workers.
The union employees were not included.
Nationally, 2.7% of workers make minimum wage, says economist Chris Keel. Increasing their base pay is huge for them, and it won't drive up costs for consumers, but it will decrease the number of jobs available, and it can hurt some small businesses.
One of the big challenges going forward is that rather than trying to figure out ways to pay people more for a minimum wage job, it should be helping people get into careers that simply pay better all the way around.
Keel says streamlining technical training in construction, manufacturing, and skilled labor will make a larger improvement on the economy. For Banks and his colleagues, they'll continue their cause.
Keep fighting, push for this 15 an hour.
Brian Johnson, KMBC 9 News.
Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, where is it? Lost it. Okay, the heck with it. Well, no. Let's do this. No, I need to find that. because I wanted to read to you what I oh, come on here. What was it? Oh, I guess I could just do a thing on KMBC. That's right. NBC News. Here it is, okay.
Workers concerned about low wages hold two.
Okay. I wrote a book. Okay. I'm not going to subject you to, but, well, let me just say a little bit. I worked at I started out at a hospital. Well, okay. I worked at research, I worked at a couple hospitals, and I worked at Research Medical Center. I worked a total of 18 years, I think, but I moved to different hospitals or whatever. Anyway, all of the hospitals that I worked at were, of course, anti-union. And whenever a union would show up or to picket outside or whatever, the administration of the hospital would go crazy. And of course, security would be notified, make sure these people don't set foot on hospital property. Watch them. If you see any employee, they'd be telling security, if you see any employees talking to them, if you see any, and if they gave, administration went crazy. And, oh my God. Now as far as the wages are concerned, and this guy said he'd worked in housekeeping for Research Medical Center for 20 years, and he's making $13 a wage, or $13 an hour. And probably he would be happy to get $15 an hour, but what should happen is, and $15 an hour is not, those people, they work their asses off. And it's not just the housekeeping people that are cleaning the floors and doing all the employees do. And look what, with the virus situation, look at this. Those people are on the front lines of, working their tails off. And I'm not new to saying this. Like I told you, of course I was on that committee that, graded things, but also at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, when I worked there, they had, a couple of courses that were taught at the hospital. I can't remember the names of the courses, but anyway, to train supervisors. And I took, both of them. And I was the only one in both of these classes everybody else was a nurse with a bachelor's degree in nursing or whatever, and I was the only one that was not nursing. I'm sure there were probably some other, that was the only class I didn't have. Anyway, I was there. And one of the classes was taught by, they had several people coming in for one of the classes, because that was another one of these contract things. A company goes around, place to place. But anyway, the one, participatory management, I think might have been the thing. Anyway, the director of human resources, or personnel or whatever, nice guy, a great guy, a decent man, a good man. Of course, the fact that I did 4 grievances and he was on my side on all 4 of them, that makes me, no, I would like him anyway. Vernon Johnson was his name at Trinity Lutheran Hospital. I saw where he passed away from the obituaries. When you get my age, you look at the obituaries to see, who's gone. I don't look all the time, just look occasionally, and occasionally I see somebody that I worked with or knew. But anyway, so we're in this thing, and he's doing the part where he's explaining about wages. Okay, now it goes by like education. If you have a, LPN, if you're like an RN, but you don't have, the pay scale. If you're an RN with a bachelor's degree, then the pay scale, and then each one is, I forget what it was. Each one is 20 steps. So you have, food service or whatever, and theirs is 20 steps, and then the next one is 20 steps, and then and then it works up that way. And so I'm not going to go into all the detail, but I said, Mr. Johnson, on the second shift, you've hired in a bunch of students from the deaf school. I knew what I can't remember now, but from the deaf school, and I said these guys are, they're deaf, and they are the most fantastic employees. They are working their asses off there all the time. They're helpful. I said, they're deaf, and they told us about these two guys are very, suspicious. Well, they didn't, these two guys are suspicious because of whatever, and it turned out that we made a major arrest of, 3 guys at that time that they had a gun. They went for their gun underneath the seat of the car when we confronted them. I've never seen in real life, like burglary. They opened it when the trunk of their car was opened up. They had burglary tools. They had the things for making the telephone calls without having to pay. It was unbelievable. Anyway. Actually, I had just left the second shift, and I was no longer the supervisor. I'd gone to the day shift, and then the guys made that arrest, and they got letters of commendation from the telephone company and from the vending machine. Oh, they were going to vending machines, and breaking into vending machines and stuff. And they got letters from the vending machine corporation and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so anyway, I told him, I said, these guys are, they're fantastic. And I said, you should pay them more money. Well, Jim, we have this thing, education, and then there's 20 steps. And I said, okay, I know about your 20 steps, your 20 steps, your 20 steps. I said, you could hire, don't fire anybody, but you could let some of those guys go, and they would still get the work done, and they would produce more, but, pay them more money, and I went through this thing with him, and his thing was, but Jim, education, and then 20 steps, starting pay, then you move to this, and then you get to the top of your pay scale. I knew about the top of the pay scale because I was always at the top of the pay scale, never got any more money, But so I advocated for, and I like this guy who's worked for 20 years for them, research. I worked 18 years for him. He's worked 20 years for them. What should happen if they decided to go to minimum wage of $15? Nobody starts in, no matter what you are, at less than, say, $15 an hour. That's not enough, especially for hospital, but it should be actually a living wage. And I understand all of a sudden you can't have all the businesses say, okay, we're going to pay a living wage, Although I think if you have Democrats, a Democratic administration and Congress and that type of stuff, a way could be worked out to work towards a living wage. Tax breaks and do different things could be done. It could be done, but we're never going to see a living wage. But what would happen here? I'm sure, is if, and this, by the way, this hospital, when I worked for Research Medical Center, they formed separate corporations, you know. They had, anyway, separate corporations. They had put things into anything to, hospitals should be, by the way, in my opinion, hospitals should not be allowed to be non-profit unless they really are non-profit. And they're not non-profit, or they, you know, they make a profit. They make a ton of money, one way or another. But anyway, what would probably happen is if they were to go to a $15 minimum wage is they wouldn't, you know, this guy would make a couple dollars more and he's worked for him for 20 years. No, what should happen is if he, you know, 20 years, he should have been at the top of his pay scale. So if the 20 steps or 10 or whatever it is, you know, but they wouldn't do that. You know, they should boost him up to, you know, $26 an hour or something, because he'd been there for, but they wouldn't do that. They'd say, okay, you're getting $15 an hour now. The poor guy'd probably be happy, you know. Anyway, if you want to, I'll put the link to this here, and you can, I'll actually paste this in underneath this, a thing that I do. I'll do that too. But anyway, I talk about a whole bunch of stuff here. I talk about how, I gotta mention this. I'm not a lawyer. I wish I was. No, I don't. I hate lawyers. But anyway, everybody hates lawyers. You're allowed to hate lawyers, I think. The first hospital I worked at, I saw a confidential thing that the personnel department had. And what it was all the hospitals worked through the Greater Kansas City Hospital Association or whatever. They worked through that. They shared data. So they had all the information. Let's say housekeeper. Okay, housekeeper 1, housekeeper 2, housekeeper not. It's, you know, that's the thing. Somebody could hire in as a housekeeper 1, a housekeeper 2, or a housekeeper 3, or you could be a unit secretary. You know, and it would be like secretary. It could be, okay, whatever. One would be somebody sitting at a unit, you know, on a floor or whatever. And then there could be secretary for the personnel department or for the hospital administrator or whatever. And they would have like different classifications. But all this for all the employees, including security. It would be all this information they would share it among themselves. Isn't that restraint of trade? Isn't that, shouldn't they go to prison, or shouldn't they be fined, or shouldn't they be broken up and not allowed to do something like, and have to pay a penalty? Because they had on there for these people at all the hospitals, you know, the personnel, human resources, they had this access to this information, confidential information. By the way, I never went and looked for this kind of stuff, but it was shown to me. The first hospital I worked at, a security officer said, hey Jim, look at this. And then later, another hospital, I saw just one page of it. It was put up in the security office because our director of security there told us, because of everything we did, he told us we're the highest paid security officers in Kansas City. Nope, we were number 3. And by the way, you know who the lowest paid security officers were? Maybe not the very bottom, but you know who the lowest paid security officers were? Truman Medical Center. That's the county hospital that got all the shit. And those security officers had to be security officers. They had to be commissioned. You know, they had to go to the range and all like we did, all of us that. And in addition to that, like I became like out of the hospital working when I was working at research, I was I trained as an I trained as an EMT. I didn't have to be in security. You know, I was the only one out of 25. I was an EMT. The security I didn't have to use that. I mean, I just did it to make me more valuable. But I didn't get any more money for it. But anyway, but at Truman Medical Center, just about the lowest paid hospital security officers, they had to be paramedics, and they drove the. Oh, I take that back. Wait a minute. Okay. No, Children's Mercy Hospital was okay. Got those. It was the Children's Mercy Hospital, and they had to be all security officers and paramedics, and they drove the emergency ambulance to go pick up little babies and transport them and stuff like that. And they were about the least paid. Anyway, they have this information and they share it. I mean, so they knew. So if you're an RN and you go to apply at St. Luke's Hospital or St. Mary's Hospital or wherever, and you go in, the person there that's interviewing you, which would probably be the way they would do it at hospitals, there would be a nurse who would be, I mean, in human resources, pretty good job, an RN or whatever who works, in the human resources department. She never has to, change a diaper or do anything. She's doing paperwork, But they're sitting there and they know, okay, here exactly is what the starting pay for RN1, RN2, or whatever, whatever the ranking would be. Here's what the starting pay is at all these hospitals. Here's what the top pay is. It had the numbers like how many vacancies there were for these positions and what the average, and also it's mentioned was it mentioned in here? I mentioned in my comments. Well, hospitals went crazy and shit, security officers, oh God, they're out. Union people are picketing, and their administration is going to be going crazy, And, but one of the things that the hospitals did is they did have a union for plant operations people, the guys that fixed some machinery and did stuff like that, and in there. So, let me take Trinity Lutheran Hospital. So that was the only, of course, union that they had, the plant operation guys, and so they were making pretty good money. I mean, it wasn't bad because they had a union. But there was a painter there and a guy who handled the telephone, running the wiring for the telephone, who were both they were, I guess they would be classified not as being in the plant, but they were plant operations people. That's where their locker was. And the hospital paid those guys more money and gave them a few extra benefits. And then the hospital said to the, look, these guys are doing almost the same job as you, but they're not in the union, and we are taking care of them. And you're in the union, the union's not taking care of you. And by the way, and I worked, 30 years hospital security. The plant operations, they were at each hospital, just about, union. They never, ever went on strike, ever. Never, ever. In fact, when negotiations were coming up, the plant operations guys would go to administration. Well, we can't cross a picket line, but what we'll do is, we won't leave you know, you feed us, you give us a room, you know, here, and we'll just stay. That way we don't have to cross. They never, ever went on a strike. And actually, it's a wonder I didn't get myself killed at Research Medical Center. By the way, when my first day at Research Medical Center, I saved one of the plant operations guys' lives. I pulled in first day, parked in a parking spot. There was a plant operations guy over there, and they had these. I parked on the ground floor, yellow level of the parking garage. So it was underground. They had these gigantic fans, big fans, that were on a timer that would kick on to take the fumes out there so we didn't all die of the bottom level. So anyway, I just getting ready to go to work and got out of my car, and a guy was over there, and he had the screen off, and he had his head in there in between these gigantic blades, you know. And so I went over, and I don't believe in God, by the way, but I went over there for some reason and said, "Hi, how's everything going? Looks like you're busy," or something like that. And he pulled his head out, and the thing started. Boom. And he went, "Oh shit," or something like that. He said, "I thought I turned that off." So anyway, years later, the word was passed to security. Okay, we're going to have to be watching out. The plant ops guys may go on strike. And I thought, so anyway, I went up to the cafeteria when it was time, and there was like 7 or 8 of them sitting at a table. They sort of was that way, the housekeeping people, different tables, you know, sort of. And all the plant ops guys were sitting there at the table. And I did that from time to time. When I was working, you know, I'd go over and I'd sit down at the housekeeping department. I'd be maybe just about the only white guy sitting there with him. Maybe like, why is he here? You know, they'd be like, is he here spying on us, or what's going on? You know, I'd just do that, you know, stuff like that. So I went and sat down with him, and they said something like, because I guess they thought, you know, that maybe I didn't know, and they thought maybe that would, you know, didn't know that their negotiations were coming. Maybe they, you know, they didn't realize, you know, that security knew, because administration was, oh, you know, and then our director of security, depending on where you worked, you know, would be crazy. And so anyway, I sat down with him, and one of the guys says, we're going to be, we got a union contract coming up, and we may be going out on strike. And I said, you guys aren't going out on strike. You guys are not union people. You're scabs. You've never gone on strike. Not ever. Not at any of the hospitals, have you? Now, if they'd been real union men, they would have beaten me to death and taken my gun away from me and shoved it up my ass. They didn't say a word. Or actually, of course, and I didn't care really at that point. I didn't care. If they had gone to administration and said, hey, security officer sat down, and he said, I'd have been gone. I'd have been gone, probably banned, which I wouldn't have cared, you know. I've talked about that a long time. So anyway, I'm going to upload this, and I'm going to, so anyway. I got a lot of, if you have any questions about what I said in the comments section here. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Oh, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my site. And I just need 4, and I'll have 3,000. I don't know why it matters to me. For years, I've been trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. So I only need 4. You could be one of them. Thank you very much.